This week we read Parsha's Pekudei, and we complete Sefer Shmos. Really, it's also a culmination of the last five Parshios that have been dealing with the building of the Mishkan. We had Truma, Tetzaveh, Kisisa, Vayakel, and now we have Pekudei. We had the golden calf in the middle, which lends towards Rashi's interpretation that the golden calf was really a primary element of the building of the Mishkan. It's a tikkun. We've spoken about that. It was considered to be a way of atoning for the building of the Mishkan was atonement for the Chet HaEgel. But in this week's Parsha, what's fascinating is that the detail, really, if you're an accountant, then what this week's Parsha is an audit. Right? It's a detail where every single shekel, how much was collected and where it went. Which actually the Medrash points out, and this is probably the gist of where the Medrash is getting this notion from. The Medrash points out that we have an obligation of v'yitem nikiyim. A person has to be, literally naki means clean, but there has to be transparency, not only in the eyes of God, but also in the eyes of man. That a person, it's not say, well, God knows what I'm doing. No. You have to act in a way that it's not just God knows what you do, but you can't act in a way that people might suspect that you aren't doing something you should be doing, or you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. Even if God knows, it's not enough. You have to act in a way that... So therefore, this idea of Moshe taking an accounting, the Medrash says, is to repudiate any notion of that things weren't on the up and up. And the Medrash actually brings down, right? The Medrash says that there were three groups of people who viewed Moshe's involvement. The Medrash says that it says Veibitu, they looked at Moshe from behind. There's a pasuk in the Torah, right? And the Medrash says that some commented, wow, look at that, he's such a spiritual being, and they're lauding his efforts to build in the building of the Mishkan. That his spiritual heights of being the one that God entrusted to make sure the Mishkan gets built. Says there was another category of people, that's on the other end. The Medrash, the words of the Medrash, the Gemara says the same thing. It says, look how thick his thighs are. Look how thick his neck is. You know how he's getting so fat? He's eating our money. He's consuming our money. Huh? With all our donations, they're paying for his. He's eating at the winery every night. That's what he's doing with our money. And then there was a middle group. The middle group said, you know what? For all his efforts, he deserves to be able to take a little bit for himself as well. It's understood. You put a person in that position that he has. He has to take a little himself. I remember when I was in Florida. The executive director at the time, she was just his Yortzeit Chaf Aleph Adar, Mr. Jerry Burstein, Alav Shalom. So there were some people upset that there was a lady, we had this lady working in the kitchen, but there was never anything left over. And when foods were left, all of a sudden everything was gone. We never ate it all. Where did it go? So I remember somebody went to complain to him, what's happening over here? You're not keeping supervision. He says, when I pay, part of what I pay her is the understanding. going to be taking this stuff home as well, so that's included in the salary. So there was a group that felt that, okay, he's going to be skimming off but he deserves it because he's getting, but you see, there was this notion. There was a group that said Moshe L'Shem Shamayim and he's holy and everything he does, we don't question him. But there was at least two other groups. One that completely thought, it's all self-serving, and the other one, there's a mixed, he's taken a little bit, but, he's also given. So therefore, to repudiate that notion, Eila Pekudei, there needs to be an accounting, and everything is detailed to ensure that, to the point, by the way, the Gemara says something, which also, when you read these things, you're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, but you see human nature. It says that the Gemara asks a question, B'ma shimesh Moshe, what was Moshe, the first 7 days before the building of the Mishkan, Moshe was going through the motions of what the Kohen used to do. He was teaching them. So he was the one bringing the offerings the first 7 days so that they could see this is how it's done. And then from the Hakamas Mishkan, the Kohanim took over. So it says, but what did he wear? Because we know the Kohen has to wear a special big day kahuna, and only the Kohen's allowed to wear those garments. So it says that he wore a white linen garment. A white linen garment. He didn't wear the full big day kahuna, he wore the line, but it had no hem. So I asked him, well, why did it have no hem? It says, so people shouldn't think that when he goes into the treasury, he was sticking shkalim into the hem of his garment and taking. That's Moshe Rabbeinu, right? People shouldn't think that that's human nature, So there are people that think that way. So therefore, we needed to give a full accounting. So that's the premise, the underlying premise here of why there's this detail. The Ibn Ezra, one of the greatest of the Sephardic commentaries, lived in Spain, 11th century. He brings down. He was from the group of rabbis known as the Rishonim. The Rishonim, Rashi, all the way to the Shulchan Aruch, to the Beis Yosef, even before Rashi, the Rif, right? The Rif's after Rashi. From Rashi was about 1040, all the way to about 1450. That's called the Tkufa of the Rishonim. There's different categories of what the rabbis identified. So the Ibn Ezra fell out and smack in the middle of the time of the Rishonim, Ibn Ezra. One of the greatest poets, and we have tefillos from him, but he's a very rationalist. I believe the Rambam told his son in his tzavoy, left on his will on his deathbed, he said that, he says, all the commentaries on Chumash, he was very, Kol Tzarfata, all of the French commentaries, Ashlich le Ashpata. You can throw in the garbage. But he says, the only commentaries you need to be learning, he said, is my commentary on Chumash, which unfortunately we don't have the Rambam's commentary anymore. He says, and the Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra's commentary on Chumash stuff. But the Ibn Ezra brings down Rabbeinu Sadia HaGaon. Rabbeinu Sadia Gaon, so the Gaonim was a period of time before the Rishonim. They were the ones that were head of the academies in Bavel. To get the title of Gaon, Gaon is Gimel Aleph Vav Nun, is 60. You had to have mastery of the 60 Masechtot in Shas. That's what they were called Gaonim. They knew them by heart. So Sadia Gaon, he wrote a commentary. He's actually the art scroll of the time in the Arab-speaking lands. Right? He called the Tafsir. Most of his stuff was written in Arabic, because most of the people there, Arabic was their language, so he wrote a lot of the commentaries, and he wrote a commentary on Chumash in Arabic called the Tafsir. So the Ibn Ezra quotes from Sadia Gaon, he asks a very interesting question. He says that, as Rashi brings down at the beginning of the Parsha, it says the accounting, the audit was done on the Kesev, the Zahav, and the Nechoshet, on silver, on the gold, and on the copper. So if you go through the verses, to a shekel, it brings down how much was collected. How much gold, how much silver, how much copper. The difficulty that the Rabbi Sadia Gaon has, says, in the case of the silver and the copper, not only does it say how much was collected, it also allocates where it went. It says they used the silver for this, so it tells you how much and where it went, which is like, that's the audit. The audit is not just how much is there, but what it was used for. And the copper, same thing, where it went and how much was used for. By the gold, it only tells you the amount that there was. It does not say how it was used. Very difficult to understand. Why would that be? Why don't we need to know? If you're doing an audit, why don't we need to know where the allocation of where the gold is going? That's the question that Sadia Gaon brings down from the Ibn Ezra, and the Rishonim deal with this question. One of the answers they give is that silver and copper, for the most part, were used for vessels or for parts of the Mishkan in its entirety. So it means that when you're talking about an item that was made out of silver and copper, basically you weigh that item, you got the full amount of what it was. So it was easy to calculate how much silver was in there, how much copper was in there, because the entire item was made up of silver, was made up of copper. Gold, for the most part, was used as plating. Right? So you had like the wooden boards, and then they had gold on the outside. That's much more difficult to calculate because the thickness, it's not clear cut. There wasn't specific measurements for the thing. So therefore, it wasn't given a specific tally of where the gold went because it was much more difficult to calculate. That's one of the answers that are given. I mean, the difficulty with that answer is fine. Then weigh it before you use it, and then put it into the item, and then you'll know how much went in. But that's the answer that is shown and given. Let's see today if we can come up with another answer to this question. Again, the question is, Rabbi Sadia Gaon's question is, why would the Torah spend the time giving us the complete list of not only how much silver, copper, and gold was collected, but only by the silver and copper does it actually attribute or allocate to where that was used. We don't find it by the gold. One of the commentaries on the Chumash you find in the Mikros Gedolos is known as the Das Zakenim. The Das Zakenim is a collection of interpretations on Chumash from the Balei HaTosfos. The Balei HaTosfos is also from the time period of the Rishonim. Primarily it was Germany, France, Franco-Germany. That's where they had the yeshivos. Many of them were grandchildren, and Rashi only had daughters, but son-in-laws and grandchildren of Rashi or his students became the Balei HaTosfos. There was even Balei HaTosfos of Anglia, of England, until they got expelled. And on the Gemaras, when you open up the Gemaras, the printed editions from the Rome editions in the 16th century, they have the Tosfos on the side. Tosfos it was a collection of rabbis called the Balei HaTosfos. On Chumash, it's the Das Zakenim. So the Das Zakenim brings down, I believe it might be a medrash too. He says that we need to look at the metals that were used as allegoric, not necessarily literal. He says like this. He says that Zahav, it's talking about the motivation of the people giving. Zahav is Zeh Hanoten Bari. The word Zahav, gold, is Zayin Hey. Somebody gives when he's healthy. Kesef is a person when he gives when he's sick. And Nechoshes, copper, is a person who gives after he dies. That's the medrash. What does that mean? It means there's three different types of motivation involved when people give. Some people give when they're healthy, some people give when they're sick, and some people after 120, then you get the money. So what does that mean? Besides the fact that nobody gave to the Mishkan in their will. Right? People were alive when they gave to the Mishkan. It means there's a mindset. What is that mindset reflecting? Right? Very interesting the way of looking at it, meaning that that's gold, silver, and copper. It's like when you go to a trustee dinner, you have, there's the gold page, and there's the silver page, and the copper page. It's not just about the amount given, It's the motivation. There's the gold givers, the silver givers, and the copper givers is the motivation behind why they're giving. We have to understand what does that mean. It's fascinating looking at Chumash that way. We find the same thing, by the way, in the Torah Shabbal Peh, in the oral Torah. There's a commentary of, it's a Kabbalist, one of the early Rishonim, known as the Rokeach. Rokeach, I remember seeing this when I was as a kid, when we were learning Bamitzia. There's a tractate, one of the more difficult tractates in Shas. It's called Perek HaZahav, chapter of gold. And it discusses, fascinating, in terms of a transaction. Whenever you have a transaction, all right, you have the commodity that's being acquired, and then you have the modality, you have the kinyan, the way, what transaction is happening, what's being used as the method of transaction. Right? So when you're buying your bag of groceries and you give $1, you give your dollar is to buy it. So obviously the kesef, the money, is the modality. That's what you're using, and the item that's being purchased is the gold. Okay? So the Mishnah discusses, what if you're using silver to acquire gold, or gold to acquire silver? What is looked at as the product, and what is looked at as the money? And the Gemara says an interesting thing that says, Rabbi, when he was young, he viewed that the kesef is kones as zahav, and when he got older, it was zahav kones as kesef. I'm not going to get into all the details, but just to point out, it has a lot to do with just the mechanics. What do we view as the money? What do we do as the product? It gets into that psychology, and that's what it says. Rebbe changed when he's younger, he's older. So Rekach says something which is like unbelievable, just in terms of the way he looked at Torah. He says it also reflects on a different level. He says we know that Torah is bechsav, written Torah, is considered kesef. We find very often it's used kesef. Zahav is the oral Torah. So it says that at different stages of Rebbe's life, from the oral Torah, he would come to the understanding of the written Torah, and different stages in life, from the written Torah, he would come to the understanding of the oral Torah. I'm just giving this that sometimes there are things to be understood allegorically. Gold and silver, that's the way he understands it. So we have the Dazakanim doing something similar over here, saying is that the gold, silver, and copper reflect different motivations in the way people give. And we don't understand what it means. What is the motivation of a healthy giver? What is the most motivation of somebody that gives when he's sick? And what does it mean when somebody gives after he dies? They all gave when they were alive over here. So what is the difference in the motivation? So I heard from my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Yochanan Zweig Shlita, should live and be well, say a beautiful idea. He says like this, that when a person gives to charity, makes a donation, he says there are different shikulim. There are different elements that go into the evaluation that the person makes. You know? One is obviously, how is it impacting on him? What's the negative impact in terms of giving up this resource? How is it going to impact on him? And then also, what is the gain from what he is giving? Right? Different people have different things motivating them. It might be the plaque. It might be, who knows? There are different things that motivate. So he says like this: a person that gives as a matnas bari, healthy person, he doesn't need anything. It means he has everything going for him. His health, his wealth. That means this person has everything. So obviously the only thing that motivates this person is he wants to do the right thing. He wants to give. That's the person. He just wants to give, and he's not viewing at what I'm losing by giving. He's just looking at the idea that I have to give, and he's not looking to gain. Right? On the other hand, some people aren't at that level. That's a very high level of giving. Some people are motivated when they're sick. What's the motivation for somebody who gives when he's sick? He wants to be healthy, therefore he gives for refuah shlema. He gives, the business is going bad, hopefully by giving my business will go better. Hopefully my son or daughter will get a shidduch. I mean, there's certain things there's needs that the gift is being motivated by the needs. Now, even though there is a loss because now I don't have those resources available for me, but that's counteracted by the fact that I'm getting from what I'm giving. So I'm giving something, I'm getting something. That's the second tier. The last tier is the guy's not willing to give it up when he's alive. The guy's not willing to give it up when he's alive. It means the only thing that motivates him, maybe he's afraid, what will happen after 120? After 120, and then make sure, but I'm not willing to give it up when I'm alive. Means he's only interested in what he gets from it. What he gets from it. But he's not to give up and to get something, the idea that I'm giving up something that he's not willing to do. That's why he only gives when I don't need it anymore. Right? When I don't need it anymore, then fine. Then I can spend it, but not when I have it. Because I can't see myself giving up. So there's three different mentalities involved, different motivations involved in terms of types of when people are willing to donate for something. One is the person that's completely lishmos, he doesn't care about what he's giving up. In fact, he's happy to give up. He doesn't need anything in return other than he wants to do the right thing. Right? And that the Dazakanim saying is Zehanoten Bari. That's considered the gold giver. Gold, that's the standard. The gold standard, that's the guy. People that, they're like the middle, I'm giving up, I hope to get, that's the guy's motivated when he's sick. And then there's like the choshes, the copper giver, that's, he's giving, but his giving is, as long as it impact negatively on me, I want to get, I don't want to give really. And if I have to give, as long as it's not affecting me. That's the... I want to suggest like this. It's very important yesod psychologically in terms of the way ourselves, in terms of the message we also give our children. We know this intuitively, it's just very hard to swallow. Usually, in most cases, the blame or the suspicions that we attribute to other people, that which we suspect other people about, is just really a reflection on our own shortcomings. There's an expression in the Talmud, it's kol ha-posel b'mumo posel. That's when you disqualify someone else, it's really you're disqualifying them with the shortcoming that you have within yourself. It's very hard to hear. It's like shot ba'atzmacha means do house cleaning first before you when you're pointing fingers at other people. With the expression, you point one finger at someone, you got four fingers pointing back at you. Check yourself out first. But that's just usually not always, but very often is when we have these suspicions and we have these, it's because of something we find in ourselves. So perhaps, I think there's an interesting idea here. Perhaps like this. The gold standard, who are those people? These people were the completely lishma. They want to give, and there were the group of people that said, look at Moshe, oy, l'shem shamayim. They didn't suspect him. There was no suspicions there. He was a holy person. It's all spiritual. He's doing something that's unbelievable. God has invested this in him. They did not suspect him of anything. Who suspected? Right? There are people that it's not completely shma. What do I get out of it? Either I need to get everything out of it, or I need to get something to offset. And what are those category of people referred to? Those categories are the silver and the copper. Moshe takes the time, or the Torah takes the time. What metals are the ones that need an explanation on how the money's going to be used? It's only the kesef and the nechoshes. Those are the ones that you have to be transparent for, because those are the ones that are raising suspicions. Now, which ones are the ones raising suspicions? The ones that themselves, they need to get something out of it. If they're not getting something, what's the hook? There's always a hook. But the ones that were on the gold level, there was no suspicion. So then you only talk about the allocation. You only talk about the amount. They don't need to allocate. I don't need to see. You know what it is? And you see that. I mean, I see that all the time. You know, it's very often, there are certain people that donate, and the people say, I need to know where it's being spent. I want to know where, there's different, we do, that's why we have an annual report. Where did the money go? Where it is, people. But the people that are on that gold level, they believe in what they're giving to, and they're happy, and you don't have to come tell me what it's being spent for. I don't need to know what it's being spent for. But that's the difference, then therefore it could be, that's the pshat over here, that the interesting thing is that, there's the Maram Lublin, or Meir Shapiro, he says there was another collection that was done. There was a collection for the Cheta Egel. We go there. It says there. Not only it doesn't even say the amounts. It says everyone gave. Right? It says for tuition, everyone wants to know and fights over every single dollar. Vacations. We don't start fighting over how much we're spending and how much, This the Cheta Egel, they gave, they had no problem giving, but the idea, but we're saying a little more. We're saying is that the idea here of the gold standard, the gold giving that's being listed, is there's no need for that to attribute, because those people didn't feel it was necessary. But I think the more important point in terms of the Yesod, I think this is something very, very important, is that we have to do a lot of self-reflection, and as a message also we need to be giving over to our children. We start accusing people and being negative about people in certain areas. How objective is that? Is that, I'm not saying it's not always, but is that really a reflection of our own shortcomings? And if it is, what do we need to do to fix that within ourselves? It's something that it's the Gemara says a very interesting lesson. It says, "Kol negayim adam roa." A person sees all blemishes and all defects except for negay atzmo. He can't see his own defects. A Kohen is not allowed to rule on himself about saras. But if he has skin discolorations that make you tummy, he has to get somebody else to come do it for him. A person can't. So it's very hard. Which means, by the way, that very often the only way to deal with these, to create that objective reality, is to find somebody that you're very close with. Might be a therapist, it might be your best friend, but be able to speak about these issues, because that's sometimes the only way to really get an objective understanding of why certain things are bothering more than others, and is that a reflection on something that I have a shortcoming within myself. Most people are not equipped to be able to do that self-reflection and identify that for themselves. They need other people to help them with it, and to be able to do that. Something I think, it's, again, it seems we're learning Torah here, we're learning something that seems to be calculating gold and silver, but the silver lining, the message that's there is a huge, huge message for us in terms of our own growth and hopefully our own self-perfection. Thank you.